Welcome to Empowering Seniors. I'm your host, Katherine Ambrose. Today we're talking about estate planning, and we have a special guest. Ido Walney is an expert on financial planning. He's an attorney, and he's here in Kansas to visit with us about lessons we can learn from recent celebrity deaths. So that's quite a provocative talk that you've given 100 times or better around the country.
Yep.
And it's attention-getting, and there's so much that we can learn from the stories of other people. So how has your talk across the country been received?
Very well received. I mean, one of the things that people think is that celebrities are people who we've gotten to know really well, right? They're on TV, they're in movies, they've come into our households and are part of our lives. And we think that because of their fame and because of the money that they've made, that they can afford the best financial advisors, the best bankers, the best lawyers, and so that they won't make any mistakes when it comes to finance. And what the truth is that that's just not true. Celebrities are normal people who just happen to be really good at acting or dribbling basketballs or hitting baseballs, but they make the same mistakes that all of my normal clients make, except it's much more interesting when it's a celebrity who makes that mistake as opposed to, say, my Uncle Joe. And so it's really interesting for people to hear those stories and hear it about a celebrity that they know who's been part of their life.
What kind of action do you see people maybe taking when they hear some of these stories? Because I think they're just so shocked at some of the stories they hear.
I mean, these stories are eye-opening. One of the things that I've been able to gather in terms of the stories that I give people is that a lot of these mistakes become public. And while it's more interesting perhaps when it's Prince who we're talking about, the same methodologies that I use to research Prince and his estate and the mistakes that he's made and the fights that have happened as a result of the mistakes that Prince made and the media spectacle and the infighting in the family and the fighting with the IRS, I can do that same research when it comes to almost anybody. And for a lot of clients, that's horrifying. And so it really is inspiring for them to learn these lessons and avoid those mistakes.
So Prince could play really any musical instrument, a genius, and produce so much music during his lifetime. What do you think he was thinking about with regard to his estate?
So infamously, Prince was a unique person. He was very private. His way of thinking about music and the music industry is what made him a genius. Unfortunately, in other aspects of his life, Prince's genius didn't pay off so well. I tell people that infamously, Prince had an estate plan, but his plan was that he was simply never going to die. And that is a fact. Unfortunately, he didn't follow his own plan. And so he didn't have any documents, because if you're not going to die, what's the point of having a will, right? You'd never execute the will. So when Prince died without documents, it created quite a mess for his family because there were no documents to rely on. When you have no documents now, you rely on the laws of intestacy, which are the laws that the state puts up for people who don't have estate planning documents. Those are administered in a public manner. So now you have this ultra private person whose affairs are all laid out bare for the world to see. Prince had no spouse and no known children. He had a son, Amir, who died as an infant without any spouse and without any known children. What ends up happening is hundreds of people come forward saying that their mother may have had an affair with Prince and they were the product of that affair. And if even one of those people had proven to be a long-lost heir of Prince, they inherit the entire estate. So there was a huge incentive for people to come forward. Ultimately, none of them proved to be Prince's heirs, and so now the estate is administered differently. But all of that was done in a public forum, which I'm sure if Prince were alive to see, he would have been horrified.
So what happened to Prince, that would be the same in any state?
Yeah, so every state has what we call the laws of intestacy. So, of course, everybody should get their estate plan done. But not surprisingly, there's a huge percentage of the population that gets no estate planning documents done. And so every state legislature has passed what we call the laws of intestacy. And these are the default provisions. It's one size fits all for how the state's courts would execute someone's estate when they don't do their own planning. And so it's a default estate planning tool that the courts will use when you don't do your own estate plan.
And I imagine it's very costly. A lot of money is going to the state and lots of people trying to sort all of this out.
It can be. I mean, you've got lawyer costs and probate fees, and probate is not a very simple procedure. It can take anywhere from 8 to 18 months, sometimes longer. Notoriously, Anna Nicole Smith's estate took over 20 years to administer because that was a very complicated estate. And so it can be very expensive. It's all done in a public forum. A lot of times with technology now, from the comfort of your own home, you can see what people had, where it was going, what it was worth, what those people's addresses are. So it's not an ideal outcome for a lot of people.
It occurs to me that, like Prince being a very private person, maybe he put that off. He died at unexpectedly at a younger age. But I would think that maybe people that have more sensitive financial issues, things that they're embarrassed about, might be people that would hesitate. And then, like you said, that all gets drug out. And then there's people that they think they have it under control. They think they've done what they're supposed to do. They have a will. Who knows when they did it? So tell us about that.
The statistics are actually shocking. So in the U.S. population, only about 40% of the population has an appropriate estate plan done. Of the people who have done some planning, only about 40% of those have plans that currently meet their own situation, meaning the laws haven't affected them, they haven't gotten divorced. So you're looking at a US population of roughly 16% that has an up-to-date estate plan done. That is a very minuscule percentage. And I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter whether you're young or old, rich or poor, black or white, it doesn't matter what your circumstances are. Almost assuredly, you're going to be in a better off situation, and your family's going to be in a better off situation getting some planning done. Because it doesn't just mean doing planning in contemplation of death. There are things like powers of attorney and HIPAA authorizations, things that just make life easier to live, both for you, your spouse, your family. It's really important.
And people that don't have things planned out, can you tell us what guardianship and conservatorship mean?
So when, for example, you no longer have capacities over your finances or your own well-being, you can have someone go to court and be appointed by a judge in order to manage your finances or make health decisions for you. But whereas we can just do that with a healthcare power of attorney or a durable power of attorney, a very simple document to execute, now we've got to go to court. Someone's got a petition. There are a lot of forms. The courts in general are nervous about taking away someone's ability to make their own health decisions. So sometimes you'll need a guardian ad litem who is going to advocate to not do that or interview the potential ward to make sure that they need that. There's a lot involved, and it can be not only time consuming but very expensive.
And when you have a professional ward, the family might not be involved anymore, and children may not have a say. Is that true?
It's possible. So if you've got, my firm does guardianship, and sometimes we're appointed as the guardians, and we're not the ward's family members. We're simply appointed by the courts to make decisions for that person, generally more financially than health-wise. You know, we don't want to be in charge of making health decisions for someone, but it does happen. And for a lot of families, that can be off-putting. But sometimes you've got families that are fighting, and when you can't come to good decisions, sometimes it's better to have a third party be that decision maker. It depends on the circumstances, but you know, these are very personal decisions for families, and rather than leave that to chance, it is way better to have that planned in advance where conversations can be had before you've lost your capacities, hopefully, so that if someone's going to be upset, we can talk it through. Or if we know that this is what mom and dad would have wanted, you're just more at ease with those decisions rather than leaving it to chance or trying to think about what mom or dad would have wanted.
Right. Or, you know, having people surprised with how things turn out and can cause bitter feelings.
Surprises are bad.
Surprises are bad. I mean, there you go. And these relationships are very fluid and dynamic, and so things change in people's lives. So how often should they be updating their estate plan?
My recommendation is that once you have an estate plan in place, and by the way, I recommend that really anyone over the age of 18 have at least some basic documents. You don't necessarily need a will or a trust, but even basic powers of attorney, HIPAA authorizations, age 18 is when you should start getting those. Once you have them, update them about every 3 to 5 years. And the reason I like that time period is because people come and go from your life circumstances change, your finances change, the laws change. And so even if you're just dusting off the documents and wondering, how did we treat our kids? Are our kids adults now? Is our friend who we named still in our life? Is Aunt Judy still alive? These are really important things to just touch bases on and make sure that the documents are still appropriate. If they are, great, another 3 to 5 years and dust them off again. But at least in that 3 to 5 year time period, you can look and see if updates are needed and make those updates if they're required.
So if you're a grandparent or great-grandparent or boomer, and you're thinking that my parents need to get their estate planning done, or we need to get our estate planning done, really it's something to hear that the 18-year-old children in our lives need to have power of attorney. What are some of the documents that they really should have, an 18-year-old?
So the reason I say 18 is the age of adulthood. And even though we send our kids off to college, we know that they still look at us as the hotel, the laundromat, the bank, the restaurant, right? We serve all these things for our adult children, but they are adults in the eyes of the law, even though they're children in our eyes. Because they're adults, they need things like a healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney, HIPAA authorizations. Those are really the 3 key documents that I would recommend for any 18-year-old.
So what are some of the celebrity stories that we can really learn a lesson from?
Prince was a great one. We've already talked about Prince. There are a lot of other ones. Michael Jackson is another great one. Michael Jackson had a gigantic estate, not only in terms of the volume of assets that he held, but he had an incredible property, the Neverland Ranch. The Neverland Ranch is a great example of the efficiencies that an estate has got to execute when it inherits a piece of property. The Neverland Ranch had that giant clock in the front made out of shrubbery and a giant mansion on it. It's an extremely large property. When Michael Jackson died, it was initially listed for $100 million. Because it took a number of years to find a buyer, the administrators of the estate had to figure out what monies are worth spending and which need to be conserved for the benefit of Michael Jackson's 3 children. And it turns out that Neverland Ranch was extremely expensive to maintain. So it ends up getting sold at the end of 2020, not for the $100 million that it was put up for sale for, but instead for $22 million, almost an 80% discount, which is a huge discount, a huge loss of revenue for Michael Jackson's children. Michael Jackson had a very simple estate for someone of his celebrity. He had 3 children. Those 3 children were unique individuals in their own right. And instead of having assets held in trust for them, there were very young distribution ages where his 3 children got those assets, which one could argue were not wise for both an asset protection perspective or for a mental health perspective. A lot of assets in Michael Jackson's estate were not properly titled into his trust. And so even though some trust documents were drawn up, you don't have the efficiencies of avoiding probate. And so notwithstanding a trust, I can still look up a lot of the assets that he had because it was still done publicly. A really, really interesting and unique estate.
He had a trust. How much money should someone have before they start thinking about a trust?
In the realm of trust, there are dozens of different kinds of trusts. All trusts fall into one of 2 categories, revocable trusts and irrevocable trusts. When most people think of the word trust, they immediately are drawn to that idea of an irrevocable trust, the sort of trust that has asset protection, has its own EIN number, is a lockbox. We think of that as something wealthy people have. And there are a lot of different benefits that a trust like that can have. Most of the trusts that we're setting up are revocable trusts. They're looked at as will alternatives. And so it really isn't a matter of a large amount of assets. It is about the benefits and efficiencies that a revocable trust brings to the table. And so it requires very few assets to actually make that sort of trust justifiable. But the benefits include privacy, because you avoid probate, efficiency of title transfers, because if I have my name on a title for, say, my house, and I pass away, when you transfer that real estate, you've got to have the then current title owner sign off on that property, which, unless you live in Chicago, is very difficult to get when someone passes away. And so when you have a title owner being a trust, the person who signs on behalf of the trust is the current trustee. And there are successor trustees, sort of like with a business. And so when someone passes away, you don't have to go through a lot of rigmarole to get a successor name to have that property transfer efficiently. There are tax management provisions that we can put in that sort of trust. So it really has less to do with volume of assets rather than efficiency of administration.
So financial planners, estate attorneys put so much study into all this and continuing education. It's very, very specialized. And so I'm a big one for going to a specialist because there's a lot of different people that could maybe design these for you that might not have the best background in it. And so how do you choose a professional?
That's a good point, because especially today in the age of the internet, everybody thinks they can hop online and just find documents or go to LegalZoom and pay their $50 and this is great. But it turns out not to be great, because even with a service like LegalZoom, which is fine, it's great, I can read the documents that are produced and know what's good and what's bad. I can go through their questionnaire and know what they're getting at based on those questions. But a lay person, a normal person, doesn't have that background and skill. And so when a document is produced and you read it and it sounds nice and legal, you think you've got a great document done, but you don't know what you've missed, you don't know the ramifications of the choices you've made, you don't know what other options were available, and you don't know what ancillary documents you need. The benefits of a professional being able to speak to you about that is invaluable. When you have estate planning documents, at the end of the day, for a long time, these may sit on a shelf or in a drawer, but you need these documents to work at that point where they are necessary. Whether you've become incapacitated or deceased, at that point you need them to work. So they've got to be good. I generally recommend that you find a specialist who does this as basically the only thing that they do. When we're sick, you don't go to a general practitioner to do heart surgery. You don't go to a general practitioner if a very important organ is not working right for you. This works along those lines. This is a specialty area which doesn't get enough focus from people who are general practitioners. And so I often recommend you've got to go to a specialist. There are a lot of resources to find someone who you like to work with. The National Association of Estate Planners and Counsels, NAPEC, is a great resource for that. You can go on their website and find a local practitioner who is a specialist. A lot of them are certified and credentialed. It's a great place to start.
So we're sitting in the beautiful Kansas Leadership Center. And so I was thinking about the topic of leadership, and you have a couple of children that are in professional or working towards, quite the sports careers. When you're thinking about leadership and coaching, what can we kind of pass on or to our children or glean for our own lives when it comes to coaching?
We were laughing before we started recording that when we were growing up, we would watch cartoons like the Jetsons, and it was great because the technology that they had gave them all this leisure time, and this was time that we were just going to spend with our families, relaxing and de-stressing from the day. But in fact, the opposite has become true. While a lot of that technology has been realized, what it's allowed us to do is pack more and more and more into a day, and the world is becoming much more specialized. And so I think that not only do we need coaches in our lives, we need advisors who can help us in really every stage of what we're doing, whether it's a financial advisor, an attorney, a life coach. There's coaching for almost everything now, and the world is becoming a place where it's okay to ask for help and guidance. The world has gotten so complicated that it's very, very difficult to manage even day-to-day issues, and it's becoming more and more okay to ask for that help. And so I think financial coaching, elder coaching, life coaching, all of that is not only important, but almost necessary now.
Absolutely. And it's a way to give your children a leg up. It's a way to give grandchildren a way up, to think, what kind of coach can we get to help with this? And aging, talk about complicated. It's so overwhelming. The more information you can gather and the people you can consult with, the better, just to help you navigate through things so that you can have the best quality of life possible and design those years to be the best they possibly can be, and hopefully leave your family in good shape so that they continue with just the relationships and tradition.
A lot of these things are counterintuitive. And so for people who don't know better, they think they're making the right choice or the best choice for their family. And instead what they're doing is making decisions that end up being regrettable. They think that this is a great step, and it turns out that they probably couldn't have done something worse, but they didn't know. And the best thing to do is to seek out the people who do know. You know, we do these things every day. My partners who help with Title 19 work with these sorts of issues every day. The government programs, Social Security, the various programs that are available. So rather than trip through this because it's maybe the only time you'll do it in your entire life, why not consult with someone who does a dozen of these on a daily basis? And when there's a question, they either know the answer or know who to reach out to get the answer. They've got the experiences of the mistakes that others have made so that you don't have to make them. You know, what are we doing all this for? We do it so that we can enjoy our lives and then leave a positive, emotional and financial legacy for our families. And I can assure you, because I've seen it, when you leave a financial mess and when you leave issues for siblings or family members to fight over, the legacy that you're leaving for your family is probably not the kind of legacy that you are striving for. And so do those things while you can, while you're still competent and lucid and can have conversations. Talk these things through and make good decisions and get the help you need so that you're leaving just the best legacy that you can for your family.
So Ito, I think we all learned that we don't want Prince's estate plan. So what's step one to get going?
So the first thing you probably want to do is find an estate planning attorney. A really good estate planning attorney is going to gather information from you, family information, financial information, questions that you're going to have, and then sit down with you and through your questions and the information that that person has gathered, be able to make a proposal to you. For some people, that's going to be very simple. Again, for someone who is 18 years old, they just need some very basic powers of attorney, HIPAA authorizations. For someone who has a little bit more assets or is in a different place in their life, maybe you need to add a will to that or a trust. But a good estate planning lawyer will coach you through the options that are available to you, the benefits, the pros and cons, the costs, before you've signed up to do any of that so that you can make the best decision for your family.
Fantastic. And then often they might be working side by side with a financial planner. So that estate planning attorney may be able to help you find the financial advisor that works for you, or your financial advisor might be a good resource for estate attorneys that you could consider.
You know, I look at estate planning as part of being a more collaborative financial service professional team member. So when I think of estate planning, I think of financial well-being, and that includes having a financial advisor, an accountant, a banker, an insurance agent. To me, these are all different components of an overall estate plan. An estate plan is not simply having a will. That is just a document. An estate plan is about financial health and well-being. And so a good estate planner, if you don't already have it, will bring in these other advisors for you so that they can help you with the financial investing and accounting and other things that make you financially well off.
Great advice, Ito. Thank you so much for being on Empowering Seniors on PBS Kansas, and thank you for watching. I'm Katherine Ambrose, and if you have questions about this topic or anything else that we cover, you can reach out to us at 316-686-4500 or empoweringseniors@kpts.org. Until next time, this is Empowering Seniors.